Am I gonna? Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good morning. I am here today to announce the results of the Cook County State's Attorney's Professional Standards Review of the 2014 shooting of Ronald Johnson by an on-duty Chicago police officer. Mr. Johnson was shot and killed in the early morning hours of October 12th of 2014 by Chicago police officer George Hernandez. Officer Hernandez was one of multiple officers who were responding to emergency 911 calls of gunshots being fired near the area of 53rd Street and King Drive on the city's south side. Earlier that evening, Mr. Johnson and 3 acquaintances attended a party in an apartment building at this location. After leaving the party, the 4 men got into a vehicle and drove away from the scene, and Mr. Johnson being seated behind the driver of the car in the rear passenger seat of that automobile. So he was in the rear he was behind the driver in the rear passenger's seat. In the rear seat of the car. As they drove away, an unknown offender or offenders shot multiple times at the car occupied by the 4 men, shattering the rear window of the vehicle and causing other damage to the car. None of the occupants of the car were struck by the bullets that damaged this vehicle. Without calling 911 themselves to report what had occurred or driving to the nearest police station, the 4 men drove a short distance away and then returned to the scene where they had just been shot at. They then parked the car and exited that vehicle on foot. By this time, Chicago police officers were en route to the scene in response to the multiple emergency 911 calls from citizens reporting that shots had been fired in that area. The first 2 officers that arrived on the scene encountered one of the men who had returned to the scene with Mr. Johnson and the others. Those officers were in the process of speaking to the driver of the car to investigate the shooting. At the same time, other responding officers observed Ronald Johnson near that very same location. Those officers saw that Mr. Johnson was carrying a gun and ordered him to stop and drop the weapon. Mr. Johnson did not comply with the officers' orders and instead ran from the officers while holding the gun. He initially ran from 53rd Street, turning south onto King Drive, where he encountered the original 2 officers who were on the scene and speaking with the other occupant of the vehicle. These 2 officers observed Mr. Johnson with a gun, and they drew their weapons and ordered Johnson to stop and drop the weapon. Mr. Johnson slowed down and indicated that he would comply with the officers' orders. One of the officers reholstered his weapon to free up his hands to place Johnson under arrest, but Johnson was able to break free of this officer's grasp, and the officer fell to the ground. Another occupant from the vehicle confirms that he had heard police yell out that Johnson had a gun. At that point, Mr. Johnson turned away from those 2 officers and began to flee in a diagonal direction, crossing King Drive while still holding on to this weapon. Officer Hernandez was one of 3 officers who had responded to the scene in an unmarked police cruiser, and the 3 officers were exiting their vehicle when Johnson ran behind their car and toward the nearby Washington Park towards another police unit. At that time, Officer Hernandez began pursuit of Mr. Johnson and then fired 5 shots. 2 of those shots struck Mr. Johnson, one in the back of his right knee. The second shot entered just below Mr. Johnson's right armpit and exited the body near the left eye socket. Mr. Johnson was pronounced dead soon after being transported to the hospital from the scene. My office has prepared a detailed written analysis of this case, which we will provide to all of you here today, as well as to the public. This analysis provides us specific facts and details of this investigation, as well as the legal analysis that goes into a charging decision in a case of this nature. We have also compiled a video presentation that includes 911 calls, Chicago police radio traffic exchanges, and the dash cam video footage that captures relevant events as they unfolded very quickly that night. Before we give you that video presentation, there are a couple of points that I need to make. First of all, the investigation into this shooting was conducted by Chicago's Independent Police Review Authority. IPRA investigates these police shootings. We are then asked to review cases. IPRA is the investigative partner or investigative agency on this case. To be clear, IPRA is an independent entity, and I have no authority over their process or their pace of their investigations. The dash cam video we will show you shortly was initially presented by IPRA to my office on October 31st, 2014, along with some initial reports and documents relating to this investigation. IPRA ultimately provided all CPD in-car camera videos, as well as video from a nearby senior citizen center and copies of depositions of officers and citizens that have been taken in a corresponding civil case involving this shooting. It is also important for you to know that my office shared this video with the FBI in November of 2014 after having received it. After reviewing the video in the Ronald Johnson case, the FBI informed us that they would not participate in the investigation moving forward. At that point, IPRA remained the designated investigative agency that would handle this case, and that is standard procedure. IPRA investigates police shootings. From a legal perspective, in reviewing this matter for potential criminal charges, the legal question in this case is not whether Officer Hernandez shot Mr. Johnson and killed him. Those facts are not in dispute. The legal questions are, number one, is there sufficient evidence that exists to meet the legal burden of proof required to bring charges in this case? And number two, in using deadly force, did Officer Hernandez act reasonably under the law? Before we go further, I want to introduce Assistant State's Attorney Lynn McCarthy. She is the head of my professional standards unit that handles cases of police misconduct and police shootings. We have prepared a detailed description of the facts and circumstances that we uncovered during the investigation, along with the dash cam video that Assistant State's Attorney McCarthy will now present for all of you. Lynn?
On October 12th of 2014, Ronald Johnson was at a party at 53rd and King Drive. At approximately 12:30 a.m., he left with individuals A, B, and C in a car that was driven by individual A. The driver was individual A, the front passenger was individual B, the back seat passenger was individual C, and Ronald Johnson, as the state's attorney said, was in the back seat, positioned immediately behind the driver. As they left that location of approximately 53rd and King Drive, shots were fired into the vehicle. No one inside the vehicle was struck, but there was, however, extensive damage that was done to the vehicle. These are photographs that were taken by the forensic investigators after the shooting. As you can see, the rear window was shot out. There was also damage done to the front window as well as to the side mirrors. While individual A drove away from the location, he indicated that he heard the sound of a cocking of a pistol coming from Ronald Johnson, who was seated directly behind him. Rather than report the incident, individual A indicated that he received instructions to drive around and return back to the same location where those shots had come from. This map indicates an area of where the shots were fired. A relevant location is the TRC Senior Village that's located at 356 East 53rd Street. The individuals had been parked on East 53rd Street. This is the location where the party was at 53rd and King Drive. This is Calumet Avenue, and they indicated that as they proceeded on 53rd Street, the shots were fired as they passed Calumet Avenue. They proceeded along 53rd Street to approximately Prairie Avenue and then headed northbound on Prairie Avenue to 51st Street. Rather than head to the nearby 2nd District Police Station at 51st and Wentworth to report the incident, instead, they traveled eastbound to King Drive, along King Drive, back to 53rd Street to the same area where they had been fired upon. At that time, individual A dropped off Ronald Johnson, individual B, and individual C, and the 3 individuals walked out of the vehicle and in the vicinity. Individual A then parked his vehicle on King Drive facing southbound. As indicated, they made no reports to the police about those shots being fired. They did not go to the police station. And in fact, individual A reported that he avoided a passing police car as they drove around that location because, as he indicated, he believed that Ronald Johnson had a pistol on him based on the noise that he heard. As he indicated, it was the racking of a pistol noise. After the shots had been fired, there were numerous calls placed by citizens to 911. We will be providing to you a disc where we have burned all of those calls on the disc. At this point, we're going to play samples of some of those calls to give you a perspective of what information the officers had, particularly Officer Hernandez.
October 12, 2014, 0 hours, 34 minutes, and 34 seconds.
Chicago Police Emergency Miranda?
Yes, there was some heavy gunfire out here in front of 346 East 53rd Street. They're shooting again. Calumet.
Okay, how many shots did you hear?
5. So there was 4 of them. Right now he's a loud one. The one they shot off.
Did you see anyone?
You know what? 3 guys from Hood just walked past this building. And they wouldn't look in this building, but they walked towards from the 52nd and Calumet around some of this building when you come around the corner. Yeah, I'm ducking that because I don't know where. I can't see.
You know what direction they took off?
They came around this building and went towards King Drive. That's when the gunfire. They wouldn't be surprised if one or two of them laying out.
All right.
And it's on the bullet because the cops is always here coming in out of the building, but I don't see one.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. All right.
October 12, 2014, 0 hours, 34 minutes, and 44 seconds.
That call came from the TRC senior building that was circled in red that I pointed out. Now this third call actually comes later on after the shots are fired by Officer Hernandez, but it refers to the shots that were fired earlier in this incident.
October 12, 2014, 0 hours 42 minutes and 1 second.
Chicago 911.
Hi, my name is Jim. This is the fourth time in about 45 minutes that they're shooting out in front.
Okay, how many shots did you hear?
Right now, this is 4 or 5. About 10 minutes ago, it was like about 4 or 5. About 20 minutes before that, it was like about 7.
Okay, we'll get them back over there, okay?
Please do get the idiots out of here, please.
All right, bye-bye.
In addition to the 911 calls, there are OEMC radio communications that are made by the dispatcher relayed to the officers. There's also communication by a sergeant who also heard the shots fired. Again, we are providing these communications to you, and we'll play a few of those now.
Hey, Robert, I'm in the 2nd District lot, and sounded like I just heard about 7 or 8 shots directly east of this location.
All right, 10-4 for the units in 2240 Roberts reporting loud reports just east of the station, 51 Wentworth, 5100 South Wentworth.
It seemed like it was a little ways down.
All right, 10-4, possibly a distance from the east of the station. .235 Robert. Yeah, 25 Robert, you gotta check out this one shots fired ticket we're getting out. 346 East 53rd Street, 346 East 53rd Street. Anonymous caller just said 5 shots were heard, said 3 males with hoods just walked past. Last seen headed eastbound. For units and 2 units on citywide, got 1 ticket of shots fired, 346 East 53rd Street, 346 East 53rd Street. Anonymous caller said 5 shots were heard, 3 males with hoods just walked past, last seen going eastbound. Nothing further, zone 5 is clear.
And 40 Robert, I'm sure those are the ones I heard. I heard about 7 or 8. Show me on that.
All right, 10-4 and 35 Robert, 40 Robert, just be advised, I've got a couple more calls. One said 5-3 in King, 5300 South King. Caller said he heard 9 to 10 shots fired, no shooter info. Then we also got 346 East 53rd Street. Says 2 male blacks were just shooting. Said the offender took off eastbound and then through the alley. Both were wearing dark clothing. I'm sorry, somebody was coming in. This just all hit the board.
This is the second time tonight.
35 Robert. 245 Robert?
25 Robert, we're here at 22 job.
All right, 10-4.
41 Robert, show us checking out the shot fired.
10-4.
6-3 is over here, 2 squad.
263, 10-4.
Camera.
527, 40 down here as well.
4527, boy, we got you there as well. Who else was riding the 4527, boy?
33 Robert.
All right, 3-3 Robert, you over there as well, 10-4. All right, units responding to that shots fired. We're not getting a person with a gun ticket. 5352 King, 5352 South King. Anonymous caller says there are men with guns who ran into the building. Said the entrance is around the corner. Said 2 to 3 men ran in. 3 units and 2 units on citywide from that shots fired ticket. We're now getting a person with a gun ticket. 5352 King, 5352 South King. Anonymous caller said there are men with guns who ran into the building. Said the entrance is around the corner. Says 2 to 3 men ran in. Nothing further. Zone 5 is clear.
352 is the school. I can
All right, 10-4. Yeah, it was an anonymous caller. It said 5352 King.
Now, the thing that I want to point out is those calls are not being played in real time. Those have been, for the purposes of the presentation, we've eliminated irrelevant calls. So those were not being played in real time. Those were played over an extended period of time. But the reason that we're presenting them to you is to assist with the understanding that when the officers arrived on the scene, particularly Officer Hernandez, all those calls are relevant to determine the reasonable belief that Officer Hernandez had as to whether or not Ronald Johnson had a weapon at the time, or to understand what the officers were encountering when they what the officers were encountering at the time that they responded to the scene.
What unit was Hernandez's vehicle?
At the time that the officers received those calls, they were dispatched. The first car to arrive was Officers Hooper and Officer Monty. They were in an unmarked vehicle that did not have dash camera. The unmarked vehicles are not equipped with in-car camera recording equipment. The second car to arrive was a marked vehicle that had Officers Abraham and Officer Calvin. That is a marked vehicle that did have the dash camera. It was activated. That will be the camera that is relevant that we will be showing to you. That camera did not have an audio portion activated. It was video only. Officers Hooper and Monty were the officers that exited their vehicles and spoke to individual A, who did point out the bullet damage to his vehicle at that time. That vehicle was parked near a bus shelter in front of the building where the party was held. We have a diagram to illustrate those points to you. This is Martin Luther King Drive here. This is East 53rd Street. This is the building where the party took place. This is the bus stop shelter located here. This is individual A's vehicle parked southbound on King Drive. The blue vehicles, this is the first vehicle Officer Hooper and Monty were in. The unmarked vehicle, this is the marked vehicle that had the dash cam. There are two other vehicles that also responded. This is an alley here. This is an unmarked vehicle that Sergeant Costello was driving. This here is a marked Tahoe vehicle that was Officers Hurt and Gilliana. It did not have a dash cam equipment that was operating. Their lights and sirens were not activated, which would have activated the recording equipment, and they did not manually activate the equipment either. So the only dash cam recording of the shooting incident comes from this vehicle back here, which was Officers Abraham and Calvin. As I indicated, Sergeant Costello was driving through this alley here, northbound. This is the marked Tahoe. When Sergeant Costello is positioned in that alley, he observes Ronald Johnson wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt, and he fits the description that had been broadcast over the radio communications, as do Officers Hurt and Gilliana. They then position their vehicles heading eastbound. The Tahoe positions eastbound, Sergeant Costello positions westbound. Ronald Johnson is then observed in this location. He then runs eastbound on 53rd Street toward King Drive. The chase is then broadcast over radio communications. At the same time, Officers Hooper and Monty are outside of their vehicles, right here speaking to individual A about the damage that was done to this vehicle. The damage to the vehicle was broadcast over radio communications, which you will also hear. This designates Ronald Johnson. Ronald Johnson ran in this position toward King Drive, and that chase was also broadcast. When you view the dash cam video, you will notice that the position of this vehicle does change, and that is done in response to the radio communication that the male is running eastbound on 53rd toward King Drive. The vehicles are in a position where they end up blocking each other in, and that results in a foot chase. So the officers from these vehicles exit their vehicles and begin a foot chase. You will see that on the video when it is played. Ronald Johnson runs to King Drive. He will then turn and proceed in this direction, right in the direction of where Officers Hooper and Monty are positioned on the sidewalk. Officers Hooper and Monty hear the radio communication that the male is running in their direction. They have their weapons drawn, and they proceed northbound toward the direction where he is situated. He runs toward them. They observe a weapon in his hand. They attempt to take him into custody. At that point, Ronald Johnson engages in a struggle with Officer Hooper. You will not see this on the footage of the video. The angle of the camera and the dash camera is such that there's an interaction, a struggle, a physical struggle with Officer Hooper and Ronald Johnson that is not captured on the video. Officer Hooper is knocked to the ground by Ronald Johnson. He then gets up, changes his direction, and runs back toward 53rd Street, the same direction in which he came. At the time that the officers are involved in this chase with him, at that time, they were not aware whether he was the offender or the victim of the aggravated discharge of the firearm from those shots that were being fired earlier. At the time that they're also involved in this chase, they are also calling out for him to stop and drop his weapon, and he is not complying with any of their verbal commands. This shows how he ran in the direction of Officer Hooper. At the same time, there's another vehicle, an unmarked police Tahoe, that is on the scene. This vehicle, driven by Officers List and Jones, drives up on the grass and heads northbound in the grass in Washington Park and attempts to stop Ronald Johnson. At that time, there is yet another vehicle, an unmarked vehicle that does not have dash cam recording equipment. This is the vehicle that Officer Hernandez was in. The vehicle is driven by Officer Liano. Officer Gonzalez is a passenger, and Officer George Hernandez is the backseat passenger. This vehicle is heading southbound on King Drive. As they're approaching, they're monitoring radio communications. They also have a view of what is transpiring over here. They have a vantage point and are able to see Ronald Johnson running southbound on King Drive. They're also able to see the struggle with Officer Hooper, his efforts to stop Ronald Johnson. They also see Johnson knock Hooper to the ground. They see Johnson get up, change course, and run back through King Drive. And you will see that Johnson will run diagonally through the middle of the street, heading into this public park, into Washington Park.
And what unit is that?
Yeah, we'll answer questions later.
Well, just for the purpose of
that
the
time-
radio, if you play the radio, so we know what we're listening to, what unit is Hernandez in? What
Just
number
keep
unit?
going.
At this time, this vehicle that Officer Hernandez is in proceeds southbound, crosses the intersection. The three officers exit the vehicle. Their weapons are drawn. Johnson runs behind their vehicle and crosses diagonally into the path of this unmarked vehicle that is attempting to intercept him as he's fleeing into the park. The three officers, as I indicated, exited their vehicle. At the same time, the officers are chasing along East 53rd Street. There are several officers that are chasing him as he proceeds this way. They are shouting to him to stop, to freeze, to drop his weapon. He ignores all of those verbal commands and continues to run into the park. At that time, Officer Hernandez discharged his weapon at Ronald Johnson. You will see the flash from Officer Hernandez's weapon. He discharged his weapon a total of 5 times. Johnson continued to run into the park. You will not see Johnson struck by those bullets. The position of Johnson is such that he is in the park and out of the angle of the camera. He was struck by 2 of the 5 shots, as the state's attorney indicated. One of those lodged is a gunshot wound to the back of his right knee, which was lodged, and the second was a through-and-through gunshot wound to the back of his lower right shoulder that came through and exited near his left eye. What we're going to play for you is, as I indicated, the dash cam recording is video only. It does not have an audio portion. In order to put this in the best possible perspective, what we have done is, to the best of our abilities, we took the zone radio communications and timed them and did an overlay to match up the zone communications with the video. We're going to play that for you, and then we're going to do a slow motion play of the relevant portion. One thing to keep in mind when you see the video, the timestamp that's marked on the dash cam recording is not accurate. It's delayed by approximately 6 minutes. As I indicated, you will not see Johnson struck by the gunshots. He fell forward and landed face down in the grass. And the radio communications you hear pick up where we left off with the ones we played previously about the school.
Tempo, yeah, it was an anonymous caller, just at 5352 King.
This is Officer Hooper and Monty. This is the individual A's vehicle that had the bullet damage. That's the building where the apartment, where the party had taken place.
222 Robert. I'm sorry, 22 Robert, what was the code on that?
1 Frank.
All right, 10-4, 1 Frank, and thanks to all the assistants.
That's
241 Robert.
41 Robert.
Yeah, you got a window shot out over here of the car, approximately 5312.
That's Hooper and
All
Monty.
right, window shot out, 5312 King.
Pale black, blue hoodie,
Male black running southbound on King, beige sweatshirt, black pants. Unit, you got the air. Unit with the foot chase, you got the air.
Shots fired, you better focus. We got shots fired, shots fired.
Shots fired. Shots fired by the
We
police.
got shots fired. Get the ambulance over here. We got one in custody now.
One in custody. Were any officers here?
Get the ambulance over here, 513.
All right, 513. Were any officers hit?
Negative.
10-4. We'll get firewall for you, 5-3. 10-4.
63, roll the ambulance squad. Roll the ambulance.
5-3 and King, we'll get an ambulance going for you.
Get some cars over here, squad, just in case crowd control.
Alright, 224 Robert, you want to
40 Robert, let's get the traffic blocked off on King, north and southbound.
14 Robert. Alright, 10-4.
6-3 Charlie, we're rolling wherever you need us, let us know.
Alright, 6-3 Charlie, got you going as well. 10-4 and thanks.
12 Robert, put it on the box.
12 Robert, got you rolling.
6-3, going on the box.
6-3 boy.
6-8 Robert, we're clear heading over there.
10-4.
223 on the way.
10-4. Alright, 10-4. 25 Robert, you want to start heading that way, do a little crowd control? 10-4. 21 Robert, got you over there.
34 Robert heading that way.
34 Robert, 10-4 and thanks.
6-4 boy.
6-4 boy.
We got that ambulance rolling, right?
10-4, ambulance is rolling.
Also, we haven't been advised the weapon was recovered here on the scene.
Alright, 10-4, weapon recovered.
We're We're going to play it again in slow motion. A couple of things to point out is you'll see when Johnson is coming around the corner, you'll also see, as I pointed out, Officer Giuliana chasing behind him and Sergeant Costello. They were the officers that had called out the chase over the radio. Here's Johnson running around the corner, coming in the direction of Officer Hooper and Monty. This is Officer Giuliana. She's drawing her weapon. This is Officer Hernandez in the back seat, Gonzalez and Liano. Here's Johnson running behind. You see the flash of the shots coming from Hernandez. And Officer Hernandez was the officer closest to Johnson at the time. And while that was taking place, the officers had indicated that numerous officers had been calling out to him to drop his weapon, to stop, to freeze, and he failed to comply with any of their commands. What we did in order to get the best possible view of Johnson's hands, to show any objects in his hands, we sent the video to the Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory, which was established by the FBI. We were trying to get the clearest possible image. So the RCFL processed a still frame from that video at our request. We were trying to determine if there was visual proof of the weapon in Johnson's hands. And this is the result of their work. After the shooting, several officers ran over to Ronald Johnson and indicated they observed the weapon in his hand. And as you could see on the video, once the vehicle was repositioned, the vehicle with the in-car camera, you are able to see that officers did have their weapons drawn. Officer Hernandez recovered that weapon from Johnson's hand and later secured it in the trunk of a sergeant's vehicle. As you heard, there was a public safety issue as that crowd was forming. That weapon was photographed, and as you also heard, that radio communication was made within 1 minute and 50 seconds after the shooting that the weapon was in fact recovered. The weapon recovered from Johnson was a Browning high-power 9mm semi-automatic pistol. It had an extended magazine capable of holding 21 rounds. It was loaded with 12 live rounds, including a brand of ammunition that had 3 Tula brand cartridges. Photos of the weapon do corroborate that Ronald Johnson had the weapon in his hand when he was struck and fell. There's a clump of grass. These are photos that were taken while the weapon was secured in the back of the sergeant's vehicle. And as you can see, there is grass stuck in portions of the weapon. This would indicate that the weapon was in his hand at the time he fell in the grass. That was a photo that was taken of the grass area where he fell after he was struck. Additionally, after the weapon was placed in the vehicle, at the time it was placed in the sergeant's vehicle, there was a live round of ammunition. The weapon is in the slide lock position. When it's placed in the slide lock, it's normal for the cartridge to be ejected. That did not happen in this case. As you can see, the cartridge is still in there. That's just another piece of information that could indicate that there was some type of malfunction when he fell to the ground. Additionally, there was an unfired bullet, another 9mm Tula brand bullet that was recovered on the backseat of individual A's vehicle that forensic investigators found. That was in the same position where Ronald Johnson was seated. Right there, that was a Tula brand ammunition. It was the same type of ammunition that was recovered in Ronald Johnson's weapon, and that corroborates what individual A said, that after the shots had been fired at them, he heard Ronald Johnson cocking a pistol. That unfired Tula brand bullet was sent to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab. They examined it and they found markings on it that were consistent with an extractor from a semi-automatic pistol. That would corroborate what individual A said, that he heard a cocking of a pistol in the position where Ronald Johnson was sitting. Additionally, the pistol came back with Ronald Johnson's DNA profile on the weapon, and the Illinois State Police Crime Lab did ballistics testing and was able to link Johnson's weapon to a prior shooting that took place September 25th, 2013 at 5637 South Green in Chicago. And that shooting, no one had been arrested and no weapon was recovered back in 2013.
Thanks. Based on the totality of the evidence in this case, and with the very, very careful analysis of the laws of the state of Illinois, it is our determination that no criminal charges will be filed against Officer Hernandez in connection with the shooting death of Ronald Johnson. The totality of the evidence establishes the following. At the time of the shooting, Mr. Johnson was armed with a handgun. Mr. Johnson had run from an area where shots had recently been fired. Mr. Johnson resisted arrest, and Mr. Johnson ran into a public park and towards an occupied police vehicle that was arriving on the scene in that park. Based upon an objective review of the evidence in the law, we have determined that the prosecution could not establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the actions of Officer Hernandez were not reasonable and permissible under the laws of the state of Illinois. Before we take questions, I would like to cover two important points. With respect to the officer shooting Ronald Johnson in the back, the fact that the Officer Hernandez shot Ronald Johnson in the back is one of many factors that had to be carefully considered and evaluated. Even though Mr. Johnson was running away from Hernandez and other officers, he was running towards a police vehicle containing two other responding officers and unknown members of the public inside that park. Furthermore, Johnson could have easily turned around and quickly fired at the officers pursuing him, or even fired as he ran. In fact, in his statements to investigators, Officer Hernandez referenced a shooting in which an offender shot and struck a Chicago police officer as the offender ran with an officer in hot pursuits. This was prosecuted by my office just recently, in August, resulting in a recent conviction of attempted murder of a police officer against a defendant by the name of William Wright. We're also going to show you this video that captured this incident right now. Keep in mind, this is a suspect fleeing a police officer on foot, and the defendant stretches his hand back while continuing to run forward and shoots the officer who is behind him. It is a chilling depiction of how quickly a responding officer can be struck down. It really is chilling, and I really believe that you need to see this. Thank you.
That's the officer who's hobbling along after being struck.
Are we going to play that slow?
Yeah. That was in real time. We'll play it again.
We'll play it slow.
In slow motion.
And point out who everybody is.
That's the offender, and that was the muzzle.
Is that Mr.
Want
Wright?
to play it again?
Yes.
That's the offender, William Wright. He had the weapon in his right hand, and you see the flash of the weapon as he's running forward.
Never turned around.
Discharged with his right hand while running forward without ever turning his body position. The officer is going to come from behind here. He was after being struck in the leg.
Lastly, I want to address statements that have been made by a private civil attorney who is suing the city of Chicago for monetary damages in this particular case. This attorney has alleged that Mr. Johnson did not have a gun that night and that the gun was recovered, that has been recovered after Mr. Johnson was shot, was planted by either Officer Hernandez or other Chicago police personnel. This allegation is not supported by any of the evidence in this case. As Assistant State's Attorney McCarthy has just outlined, all of the evidence that we have points to the fact that Mr. Johnson did indeed have a gun that evening, and the police witness accounts also support that. Accounts from passengers who were with Mr. Johnson in the car that evening, and the fact that a live cartridge casing was found in the car where Ronald Johnson was seated that matched the ammunition in the gun that police recovered in his possession. In addition, Mr. Johnson's DNA is on that weapon, and this particular weapon was connected through ballistics testing to a prior shooting in the September of 2013 in the 7th Police District and was never recovered. Again, it is our evaluation of the evidence in this case in its totality, and with a careful analysis of the laws of the state of Illinois, it is our determination that no criminal charges should be filed in this case against Officer Hernandez because a crime cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. I think we have the criminal statutes up there, or do we? Illinois is well established that justifiable use of force is a defense in a murder prosecution when the person's belief is reasonable, even if it's mistaken. The reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of the reasonable officer on the scene, rather than with 20/20 vision and hindsight. The calculus of reasonableness must embody allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second judgments in circumstances that are tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving about the amount of force that is necessary in any particular situation. And this is the relevant case law. A person is justified in the use of force against another when and to the extent that he reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend himself or another against such other's imminent use of unlawful force. However, it is justified in the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm only if it reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or another or the commission of a forcible felony. Courts must pay careful attention to the facts and circumstances of each particular case, including the severity of the crime at issue, whether the suspect possesses an immediate threat to the safety of the offenses for others, and whether he's actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest by flight. To effect an arrest, police officer may use deadly force when he reasonably believes both that such force is necessary to prevent the arrest and being defeated by resistance or escape, and the person to be arrested has committed or attempted a forcible felony, which involves the infliction of threatened infliction of great bodily harm or is attempting to escape by the use of deadly weapon, or otherwise indicates that he will endanger human life or inflict great bodily harm unless arrested without delay. Okay. And the United States Supreme Court has expressly held that if the suspect threatens the officer with a weapon or there is probable cause to believe that he's committed a crime involving the infliction or threatened infliction of serious physical harm, deadly force may be used if necessary to prevent escape, and if and where feasible, some warnings has been given. What's important when we review these cases is you have to consider the mental state of the police officer at the time that this happens. What does he reasonably believe? And that's extremely important when you're making decisions on cases like this, because that is what the United States Supreme Court dictates through the case law, and that is what Illinois law establishes. So, questions?
How do you handle this perception across the country that your office is still part of some sort of cover-up? Your transparency at levels we haven't seen here before today. But how do you handle this perception that the office is part of some sort of cover-up?
I don't know what cover-up you're referring to. I'm not covering anything up. I have shown everybody in this room what we have done. You know, we're in different times right now when we're talking about transparency and what the public wants to see, and that's what we're doing. I have pretty much opened the door here for you to see our entire analysis and the evidence that we looked at and the videos that we considered and the relevant case law. You know, I have a tough job, Alex. You know, I think I have the hardest job in this county. And I have to make decisions each and every day on cases like this and other cases that are pending right here in this criminal courthouse, okay? And, no matter what decision I make, someone's going to be unhappy, whether I charge, whether I not charge. But I run this office with integrity and professionalism, and I am going to call it as I see it, based on the facts and the evidence and the law. And the law is what guides me. And so I am making the decision, which I believe is the appropriate decision here.
Does that video definitively show that Johnson has a gun in his hand? Not the other evidence, but that video. Did the forensics show 100% certainty that he has
Well,
a weapon
you saw it, and that's why we sent it to get blown up, because the video of it, in and of itself, the video, these dash cam videos, what we've been seeing in these particular cases, they're not Hollywood quality videos. They're grainy, it's dark, it's blurry, it happens so fast. You saw it, you watched the original video, Paris. Could you tell how quickly? You probably couldn't, right? So we had to slow it down. We had to take more pictures. We had to send it to our CFL to see whether or not they could definitively find, and I'm looking at this, and it appears to be an object in there. You know what? The other thing to point out about that video, we know Officer Hernandez's gun is out, don't we? Of course we do. You can't even see that when you watch that video the first time. You can't see his weapon. And then you see flashes, but you don't actually see Officer Hernandez's weapon. And we know he had a weapon, and we know he fired. So these videos are only, are what they are. They are not the best quality, and you only get in the direction of that squad car is facing. So it's not a cameraman, like we have here today that are following that case. But I believe
there no audio?
Why do you think it was?
There's a lot of audio in
Why
here.
do you think it was necessary to release the video?
Well, first let me talk about the audio. That is frustrating because now we have seen in the cases that we're reviewing with these dash cams that there are no audio. And that's a problem for the Chicago Police Department, and I think they need to answer to that. I don't know why there's no audio. There should be audio. There's supposed to be audio, but whether it's malfunctioning or officers physically turning them off when they get into that squad car, but that's a policy, and that's something that I believe the police department has to address, and they're going to have to address it, and they're going to have to fix, because we would prefer to have the audio, but time and time again we're looking at these videos and we don't have any audio.
As a follow-up, why did the other officers in marked vehicles not activate their dash cam video as well?
Unmarked squads or unmarked SUVs, they do not have dash cams. So an unmarked vehicle, the one marked, it goes on when they activate their emergency lights. So in a marked squad car, if they activate their emergency lights, it goes on. If you saw in that video, the one SUV that's coming around, he never activated his lights. His lights weren't activated, so that's why the video didn't go on.
But they can manually activate it also, right?
They could manually activate
And
it.
why was that not?
I can't answer that.
Can I ask you why you decided to release the video? And I also want to know, if you read off the statute, do you think people just don't understand the use of excessive force and how police can use it? And then thirdly, you have the U.S. Attorney today who said there should be an investigation to look into the police use of excessive force. What do you think about that?
First of all, as far as the U.S. Attorney, I understand. I did not see it, but I did understand that he did confirm that he, in fact, is still investigating the McDonald case. And I understand that the Department of Justice is going to be looking into, the policies and procedures of the Chicago Police Department. I welcome that, because I think anything that we can do to improve police relations with the public, to build confidence in our communities that the police officers are out there doing their job and doing it correctly, I welcome that. I welcome that. What was the other part of your question? Oh, the reasoning of the video. Well, because I think what we've all seen at this date and time, and clearly the events of the last several weeks, I'm not hiding anything. And these videos are going to eventually be released. And so I thought it was appropriate to be transparent and show you exactly what we looked at, what we considered, what we did before, announcing any decision on this case.
Had it not been for Laquan McDonald, would we be here right now seeing this video?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The decision to release this today was by the mayor's comments last week.
No, it wasn't forced by the mayor's comments. This case, IPRA, so again, I think and back to your other part of the question, I do think that the general public and the average citizen doesn't understand the use of force model. They don't understand the relevant case law. They don't. You're right. You're absolutely right. They don't. And so I think we have to educate the public that, how officers are trained, what they can do, what they can't do, and when it's appropriate. So in this particular case, Dane, how these police shootings, they are investigated by IPRA. Okay, IPRA. IPRA is the investigative agency, not me. IPRA. And Laquan McDonald, we chose to go with the FBI, and they were the investigative agency on Laquan McDonald. IPRA was the investigating agency on this one. And I know there's been some announcements today there's going to be some changes at IPRA. We can't get in front of the evidence. We have to wait for IPRA to bring us evidence. They are the ones that go out and interview these people, find these people, get the evidence, bring it to us for review, okay? I know for a fact that back in April, my office supplied to IPRA 2 names of people that Mr. Johnson's family had asked to be interviewed in regards to this case. April. They just interviewed them like a week and a half ago.
Do you have concerns about it?
I do have some concerns because I personally would like to get information much sooner. I would personally like to have been able to wrap this case up, whatever decision we were going to make, much earlier. But I am bound by that. There's a new law that's going into place in January that I supported, and it all about police accountability and actions. And part of that law, although this is the situation we have here in Chicago, we do have an independent investigative agency, which is IPRA. That doesn't exist throughout the entire state. So the new law is going to create that for the entire state. But one of the actions in that new law is for the independent agency to be more efficient and get the evidence in whatever statements or whatever to the local prosecutor in a more timely fashion. That's going into law come January. So, and I welcome that. I welcome that.
When did you get all the investigatory information from IPRA on this case?
How do we get it?
When did you get it?
It came in piecemeal. It came in when they had it. And Lynn had to stay and keep asking and stay on top of them to give us the example of the witnesses.
Didn't
Months.
the original report say that he had turned and fired at them? The original police report on this, didn't it say that?
No. You know what? There might have been, and we've been seeing this more and more. A certain spokesperson who would go out and say things at the site of a police shooting. I wouldn't rely on any of those statements.
Are you concerned that maybe your investigation could be impacted anyway by a flaw in the IPRA investigation?
We believe, based on what we've done, and we're the ones who sent this to our CFL to enhance it. We believe we looked at everything.
Did the City Hall know you were going to release this today?
I don't know if they knew we were going to release it today, but
Did you share with them? Did you tell them you were going to release it at this
I didn't talk to the mayor about this.
Your office?
Was this a difficult case, or was this a fairly clear-cut one in your mind?
I think everybody, when they hear video, everybody hopes it's going to be Hollywood quality, but it's not. And so I think, in watching your faces, when we ran that video in real time, what happened, right? Wait, let's slow this down. Let's look again. And that's what we had to do. Meticulously go over it, get these stills, try to see, is there an object in his hand? I submitted there's an object in his hand.
You said that you had an outside agency.
Yeah, our CFL.
Did they conclude that's a gun in his hand?
They don't give an opinion. They just do what we have. Right, exactly.
Can you speak to the enhancement? Was that hand darkened at all, or?
I don't know. No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. That's their procedure.
Did IPRA make any kind of recommendation as far as this Officer Hernandez being disciplined or fired or anything like that? Did they do that?
They do that, but that's a separate matter. I'm not involved in the administrative, what they recommend to CPD.
Have they made a recommendation?
I don't know.
This level of transparency, is this because of Laquan McDonald, because of the pressure the last 10 days?
You know, this level of transparency, Alex, is because we're in the digital age now, okay? We didn't have videos like this 15, 20 years ago. We didn't. Now we do. And so we, as prosecutors, are changing the way we have to do things because of the fact that we have communities and we have the public that want to know. And now we have evidence like this that we didn't have before. So we are going to continue to do it.
Why is it taking a year to release the videos? Why is it taking so long?
You know, because IPRA was doing the investigation, and again, as I said, you know, I can't get ahead of the evidence. I have to wait for IPRA to give me what they have, and it has taken them that long. It took them 8 months to find 2 witnesses to interview.
On Friday, a number of documents were released in the Laquan McDonald case, some of the police reports that showed real discrepancies in what you see on the video. Were you aware of those discrepancies in the police report, and are you going to do anything?
You know, and I believe the U.S. Attorney confirmed that this morning. And again, looking at these police cases, they're complex and very thorough. The only thing I could say is what he said this morning. The investigation continues, and he has not wrapped up his investigation, and that's all I can say about Laquan McDonald. And I think that's the last question.
Thank you.
Mr. Garvey, could you spell your late name for us?
MCCARTHY.
Your first name?
First name Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.